This election, I think, was about oligarchy over corporatocracy. The Democrats stand for corporatocracy and the rule of law. Trump stands for fascism and oligarchs and chaos. And the U.S. voted for the oligarchs.
The Rational View is a weekly series hosted by me, Dr. Alan Scott, providing a rational, evidence-based perspective on important societal issues.
Produced by Soapbox Media.
The world needs evidence-based public policy now more than ever. Making the right decisions should not be partisan politics. Please help spread The Rational View by going to patron.podbean.com/The Rational View. Together, we can make a better future. Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Rational View. I'm your host, Dr. Al Scott. This episode is providing a rational review of events to the south. I'm here in Canada, and in the south, the U.S., we have a new Republican administration led by Donald Trump. There's a lot of concern on the political left over the activities of Elon Musk, the head of the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, and Trump. We should give them a relationship name, say Trump and Musk Trusk, Mump, Donlon. Anyways, there's a huge pile of propaganda that both sides are producing. What are the facts, and should we be worried? Looking at what's been put out online, first, I urge you to press like on your podcast app. I hope you enjoy this podcast. I'm going to try to, put aside my personal biases, because obviously everyone has personal biases. I'm going to try to present to you the facts as I know them. I've listened to both sides. It's very hard if you're leaning one way to find the other side. You have to go looking for it, and I urge everyone to do this. If you like what you're hearing, please press like on your podcast app, and let's chat about it on my Facebook group, The Rational View. Love to hear from you. So recently, appearing in the Oval Office and addressing the nation whilst Trump looks on confused, Elon Musk hoists his young son on his shoulders. Lately, he's not been out in public without a human shield after the recent assassination of elite health insurance CEO Brian Thompson. What is Elon Musk and the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, up to? Is it legal for a department to have access to the private data of citizens held by other departments? Are there not privacy laws in place that provide firewalls between these information so people can't aggregate it all and identify what you're doing and provide the government of the day with identifying information on the people that are speaking out, the people that are protesting, the people that are not paying their taxes, the people that have health problems? Isn't it a little dangerous that these are all in the hands of one person? Why are Americans allowing this? Why would Musk donate $290 million of his own money to re-elect Trump? What deal was made? And why do they love poutine? I mean, not the French fries and gravy and cheese version of Canada and Quebec. Everyone loves poutine. Why do they love Putin, the Russian dictator, and Xi, the Chinese dictator? Why are they abandoning Ukraine and Taiwan? I suggest we follow the money. So things are happening fast and furious as Project 2025 is put into action. I reviewed this, what I would call a heinous Christian nationalist agenda, in a previous podcast. Trump, of course, on the election trail, said he had no knowledge of it. And, I believe him. He probably still has no knowledge of the things that he's signing into law. He is not a smart person. He is a wily business person, though. He knows how to push people's buttons. He knows how to threaten people. He knows how to be a bully. But he's not that smart of a person. The Republican administration, following the rule book for Project 2025, has fired all of the independent inspectors general that hold the government to account and provide oversight on government activities. This seems odd. If they're really interested in rooting out fraud, why would they not partner with these with these investigators rather than bringing in Elon Musk. I think there are more than one motivations in play, and I think to fire the inspectors general and to not have independent arm's length oversight verifying that what you're doing is actually good for the country really calls into question who these changes are the best for. Also, for the first time ever, a president is ignoring judicial orders and has unilaterally claimed that he is above the law. That's a problem. That's one of the biggest problems. Now, sure, Trump was stymied by the judicial branch. He was stymied by the career bureaucrats, and Project 2025 is a roadmap to eliminating all of this opposition and creating a Christian nationalist theocracy. And, you know, Trump as president, he was elected fairly in an election. He has control of the executive branch, and the civil service falls under him. So, you know, he has the authority to address the civil service. He does not have the authority to overrule the judges. And this is a constitutional problem. Vance and Trump have put out opinions, and Musk talked about it in his Oval Office address, that, you know, we're going to just ignore the judges. That's what a king does. There are no more checks and balances. He's also taken power of the budget away from the House without protest, seemingly. There are no more checks and balances. The founding fathers put in place checks and balances to make the republic, and these are important things, constitutional things, to check the power of the executive, to check the power of the president. And sure, it's difficult to work within the law. I know it's slow. It's like slogging through molasses sometimes, especially, you know, when Trump sees the bureaucracy as left leaning. They don't align with his base, because, you know, most of these positions require higher education, and most of the people that go through higher education are left leaning. Most of Trump's base are rural Republicans without the higher education and who have more of a right leaning. And so he sees them as misaligned with his goals. And so that's true. He has the ability to hire and fire civil servants. I think this is within his right. But he's effectively waltzed in as an elected president and is now a king. He's got the Supreme Court under his belt, after getting, stacking it with his own appointees and having the Republicans block Obama's pick. The U.S. public has a king. They have brought in a wrecking ball of fascist politics and are beginning to see the effects. U.S. airplanes have begun to fall from the skies in an unprecedented series of crashes. Trump and Musk, Don Lon, recently fired hundreds of staff at the Airline Safety Organization. Trump also recently halted enforcement of a 48-year-old law that banned U.S. companies from bribing foreign governments. Apparently, the goal was to bolster the competitive nature of U.S. businesses abroad. So now the U.S. can bribe foreign officials too. Maybe this is Trump just not wanting the government to be holier than thou, or to hold his businesses to account for the things that they've done. I'm not sure why he feels that allowing bribery is going to eliminate fraud and waste. But Trump's signature art of the deal is working its magic on U.S. allies as he threatens armed invasions of Greenland and economic devastation and takeover of Canada. We're told maybe that the Orange Napoleon is just joking, or maybe he's deadly serious. We can't tell. He says the most outlandish things, and sure, some of them are probably negotiating tactics. Some of them he probably doesn't know about. Some of them he doesn't mean. Maybe he's just joking or playing to his crowd. But it's gotten to the point where it's pointless to give him a microphone. Trump's press conferences have become another oracle of Delphi. In ancient Greece, a drug-addled seer would utter strange sounds that would be interpreted by her acolytes. This is the same thing that Trump and these news conferences, I advise all of you to just tune him out. He's the flashy prop that the magician uses to distract from the real trick. Do not get distracted. The cult of personality around Trump and the responses to his outrageousness are a distraction. The real activity is happening, and you need to focus on that if you want to have your opinion matter. Yes, Trump won the election. It wasn't by a majority of U.S. citizens. He has less than a majority. Remember, he has less than the majority support. Less than half of people support his actions. So, sure, he did win the democratic process. He did better than Kamala Harris. He has the support and he is in power, but the Constitution and its restrictions are in place for a reason. And someone has to enforce that if you want to remain a democracy and not turn into something like Erdogan's Turkey or Putin's Russia or Xi's China. Students of history, I think, will notice the authoritarian fingerprint of narcissistic imperialism that seems to have accompanied the rise of other fascists. Is Trump trying to instigate his own Anschluss with Canada? The Anschluss was, now I hate to reference Nazi Germany, but it's also the most well-known reference. So Trump isn't Hitler. He isn't nearly as smart. He isn't nearly as organized. He isn't nearly as driven. He's basically just trying to stay out of jail. And Canada or U.S. is not post-World War I Germany. So there are a lot of differences, right? So, but I'm just using this as a playbook that has certain parallels. Hitler and Nazi Germany, the Anschluss is when they basically just amalgamated Austria without a fight. And this, if you watch The Sound of Music, this is the whole, the main issue, the main political issue in the background of this, were the Nazis trying to get Captain von Trapp and the Austrians to come around to join them in their Third Reich. And they did it because the U.S. had taken Germany had taken some of Austria's land, and Austria didn't feel it was economically viable on its own. And what's Trump's argument for taking over Canada? He's going to introduce tariffs and make Canada not economically viable and amalgamate them as the 51st state. And he's calling our prime minister the Governor Trudeau and governor of the 51st state. And he's put out a lot of very vitriolic, hateful messages attacking our sovereignty. Since our free trade agreement with the U.S., trade has flourished between our two countries, resulting in economic prosperity for both countries. Now, yes, there is a trade deficit, and I'll talk about that later, but during his first term, Trump instituted tariffs on Canadian steel and softwood lumber and forced us to renegotiate the North American Free Trade Agreement with these pressures and leverages that he could apply, which we did grudgingly, and we came to a new agreement with Trump. And this is the governing treaty that was in place at the start of his term. But now he's repeated the action, and he's again introduced tariffs on Canadian steel and and he tried to introduce tariffs across the board on Canadian products, and he's quote unquote put these on hold. This is undoubtedly a negotiation tactic, but Canadians are well aware that the U.S. is our biggest commercial market, and we are the U.S.'s biggest commercial market. His illegal tariffs will devastate our economy. We are bound to lose tens of thousands of jobs in our automotive parts industry, our steel industry, our refining industry. One thing we've learned from this situation is that a trade treaty with the U.S. doesn't appear to be worth the Mar-a-Lago napkins they're scribbled on. What is he saying to justify this attack inside the U.S.? The U.S. trade deficit with Canada is being cast by his administration as a $200 billion subsidy for Canada. It's not a subsidy. You guys are buying more shit from us than we're buying from you. And this is mainly because we're selling you oodles of cheap oil from from Alberta's oil sands at a huge discount to OPEC prices. So we're actually subsidizing you with our natural resources, and you're buying it because it's a great deal for you. If you don't want the oil, stop buying it. What he's actually doing is putting up these protectionist measures to try to accelerate U.S. manufacturing. And yes, over decades, this will work and it will hurt Canadians, but it's not a free trade policy, and it's certainly not a conservative government policy. This is socialist protectionism. This is interfering with the markets, with the open markets. The free trade agreement is open markets, is capitalist. Tariffs are communist. Right? So it's kind of this weird thing where anything they don't like is termed communist, socialist, and everything they do like is termed capitalist. But those terms have become dissociated with their actual meanings. If you ignore the oil from Canada, the U.S. actually has a trade surplus with Canada. We provide low-cost raw materials to you. You manufacture high-value luxury goods, which we buy. Our economies have become deeply intertwined with all of these goods hopping back and forth across the border to the benefit of both nations. The mood here in Canada is somber, is angry. Most of us are boycotting U.S. products to send a message. There's a campaign led by Canadians for Nuclear Energy to invoke force majeure and tear up the Westinghouse deal to build a United States-designed SMR at Darlington in Ontario, a small modular nuclear reactor, which runs on U.S.-manufactured high-grade uranium. We would prefer, I think, to stick with our domestic can-do technology after being reminded of the dangers of relying on the U.S. as a partner. Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, threatened to tear up a $100 million Starlink contract, hitting Musk where it hurts. Talk of building an east-west oil pipeline in Canada has reemerged as a strategic necessity to protect our economy and get that instead of sending all of our oil south to the U.S., we'll send it east and west to ports to trade overseas, send it to our refineries in Sarnia. We've removed American booze from liquor store shelves. Friendly Canadians are booing the U.S. national anthem at hockey games. And if this continues, we'll be recalling diplomats. We'll be recalling Canadian hockey players and Ryan Reynolds. Prime Minister John Snow has announced plans to build a wall of ice along our southern border, and the border towns have begun stockpiling snowballs. I mean, this is ridiculous. And further from home, Trump's administration is pressuring Ukraine and President Zelensky to surrender to Putin's invasion force. And he's begun tete-a-tete negotiations with his best friend, the Russian dictator, and is terming Zelensky, he's calling Zelensky a dictator, actually. He's already unilaterally giving up leverage in statements that him and his appointees have made. They've already said it's unlikely that Ukraine can be made whole again with the territory that Russia has taken. He's pressured President Zelensky to sign over Ukrainian mineral rights in exchange for ongoing defense support. And this is odd, right? I think even the Republicans, the career Republicans, or people that have always sided with the Republicans, the war hawks, find it odd. Putin and Russia has always been the enemy. Why does Trump like Putin? Why is he giving Musk free rein? Putin violently crushes protests, assassinates strong opposition voices like Alexander Litvinenko, Boris Nemtsov, Anna Politkovskaya, and Alexei Navalny. His Russia is built on powerful oligarchs who are allowed to steal as much as they want from the Russian people in exchange for absolute power. Sham elections are held every 6 years where Putin's Proud Boys stand by and guard the ballot boxes so that Putin receives over 90% of the quote-unquote vote. This is the person that Trump admires most in the world. And I think from what you've just heard, you might see why Musk and the billionaires are supporting him. This election, I think, was about oligarchy over corporatocracy. The Democrats stand for corporatocracy and the rule of law. Trump stands for fascism and oligarchs and chaos. And the U.S. voted for the oligarchs. I think this is why he likes Putin, and this is why he wants to follow in that model. He wants his oligarchs to give him the sort of deference and power that Putin has. But I maybe go too far, right? Maybe he just wants to stay out of jail, and he's happy to be led by people who are against the Democrats. It's more hurting the other side that he's interested in. Trump, I think, is not motivated by grand plans of Christian nationalism. He's not a Christian. He's not a real politically driven dictator with ideology. He's just trying to stay out of jail for some of the shit he's done. And the oligarchs are happy to take the opportunity. So I think the real fear, I think Trump is a sideshow. He's a total sideshow. Ignore him. He's a distraction. All this focus in the media on what's Trump done today, what's Trump doing next. Focus on the activities. And in other news, and this is maybe going to sound like an aside, NASA has discovered a 65-meter asteroid that may hit the Earth in only 7 years. A large asteroid, 2024 YR4, is what it's currently termed, will have a potentially devastating encounter with Earth in 2032. And if it were to strike the Earth, it would release as much as 7.7 megaton nuclear warhead, enough to level a city, a 50-kilometer radius. While not a civilization ender like the end of the dinosaurs, it would be a really bad day to be in this thing's sights. Recent detailed observations raised the impact probability to 3.1%. And this is the highest collision risk of any known asteroid ever observed. And just after that, new observations decreased the risk down to about 2% or something like that. So, it's still, less likely. It's very likely not to do anything. But this is a significant, potentially dangerous thing that we need to keep an eye on and look. And astronomers are trying to improve the orbit of this thing, but it's heading away from Earth right now in its orbit. So it's going to be not until it comes back around in a couple of years that we'll actually be able to refine it well enough to see what's going to happen in 2032. So it's going to kind of leave our radar for a little bit and come back. The impact risk corridor that people have projected extends across the Eastern Pacific Ocean, Northern South America, the Atlantic Ocean, Africa, the Arabian Sea, and South Asia. If scientists do eventually confirm a likely collision, we're reminded that NASA has previously demonstrated the ability to change the orbit of an asteroid given enough time to plan. The mission was called DART, and it crashed into the asteroid Dimorphos, showing that Trump now holds the power to redirect YR4 if he acts quickly. Based on his usual MO, I fully expect this capability will be either withheld or used as an imperialistic threat to countries such as Panama, who Trump has already suggested should be invaded. And this is kind of tongue-in-cheek, but really, let's not tell him about this, please, anyone? So, back to Donlon. Musk has supported. Musk basically has published online in his Twix a lot of very far right messages and dog whistles associated with white supremacy. He's addressed far right parties in Germany and around the world. He's supported right-wing and far-right candidates and parties around the world. Beyond his $290 million donation to the Trump campaign, he's posted in support of right-wing street demonstrations in Brazil and Ireland. He's met in person several times with right-wing leaders of Argentina and Italy. He's boosted various flavors of American nationalism, German nationalism, British nationalism, Italian nationalism, and Dutch nationalism. So he's not a nationalist himself. He's from South Africa. He's He's basically an immigrant. Why is he supporting all these other nationalisms? He's not, he obviously isn't interested in Italian nationalism. At first glance, it seems odd. However, there are common threads in the politicians and parties that Musk supports. They're all rooted in nativism, and they support government deregulation of markets. He wants less rules. He wants the Wild West of competition. He doesn't want to have unions. He doesn't want to have labor laws. He doesn't want to have to pay benefits. He doesn't want environmental regulations. He doesn't want to be investigated over when he turns off off his Starlink to the Ukraine. He doesn't want to be investigated about fires in Teslas. He doesn't want to respond to consumer complaints. He doesn't want to be in court. He thinks these things slow down progress. He's thrown his support not just behind right-wing politicians, but very extreme parties. Together with the extremist Alternative for Germany party, and alongside his unmistakable Nazi salutes at Trump's inauguration, Musk has advised Germans to forget German guilt for Nazi crimes. He follows in the footsteps of past great American oligarchs like Henry Ford in this vein, who was a pro-Nazi supporter back in the day. Musk clearly says Germany should have more self-determination and less control from global elites in Brussels. And this is the nationalism aspect. He's pushing for Germany to leave the EU. Why do the oligarchs want to destroy strong liberal governments and weaken democracies? Because they are power that opposes them. Democracy is power to the people. Good governments regulate businesses to protect the little guys who don't have power on their own. Good governments stop billionaires from pillaging the economy. Good governments, strong unions, and anti-monopoly regulations are bad for robber barons. Now let's examine what Musk is doing. What is Don Lund doing in Doge? Will they save the U.S. government billions of dollars with their cuts to government programs and the bureaucracy? Let me preface this and go back a bit. I mean, I'm sounding very biased, but I don't feel that I am. Now, I do find the thought of billionaires as a class repulsive in a similar way, I imagine, to how the founding fathers thought of kings. These are people that are above the law, that exploit the little guy, that hoard unimaginable wealth while their people are starving, while their people are struggling to get by. But I used to have respect for Elon and the visionary things he tried to do with his money. It seemed like he was trying to make the world a better place. He was making electric vehicles mainstream and sharing the patents for free. He dug mass transit tunnels. He invented the technology and built up the boring company to bore mass transit tunnels. With SpaceX, he made access to space affordable, and he pushed for colonization of Mars. I was like, he cut through the red tape. He was able to get things done that nobody else could do, and he did the right things. And for that, I admire him. His recent fall into far-right politics and conspiracy theories may be because he's a victim of his own social media algorithms, and he's fallen into the pit of echo chambers. It's replaced my admiration with disdain. His self-serving foray into buying elections is reaping massive benefits for him. With the support of only the president's imprimatur, he's wrested control of the entire U.S. Treasury from those sworn to administer and protect it. I don't think he, has the same. He's probably hasn't gone through the same vetting as the employees that do protect it. And him and his team of high IQ computer whizzes, they don't have the vetting, right? They've just been thrown in here, and who knows what they're doing. How many of them are spies with foreign governments? I don't know. Does anybody? I think we should all be watching closely, however. I believe that amidst the chaos, there is the possibility for beneficial change. And the reason I think about this is that I've often questioned bureaucracies similar to what Musk and Trump do, similar to how they do. Bureaucracy, and not for the same reasons. Trump is against the bureaucracy because they're mainly ideologically misaligned with his goals. And so they obstruct they obstruct him the same way as the Republicans obstructed the Democrats when Obama was ruling. Bureaucracies, however, tend to become inefficient in my mind. And I know this isn't, the biggest source of waste in the U.S. government. I think in every government, they are a significant source of waste and inefficiency as they grow. Now, if you look at the U.S. government, of course, if you want to trim the budget, maybe look at the Defense Department budget, which is like 55 cents on every dollar that you spend, instead of, looking at the bureaucracy who's, 16% of the budget goes to these people. So, you might be looking at the wrong thing if you want to cut. But bureaucracies have good and bad points, right? They're not all bad. They're not all good. They're the best we can do at this point. Bureaucracies are how humans manage significant projects, significant good and bad projects. They are inefficient and wasteful, but they're also the best method we have for doing great things like putting man on the moon. The ancient Egyptians must have had a bureaucracy charged with building the pyramids. Over the years, I've quietly mulled the idea that bureaucracies should be decimated infrequently to restore them to efficiency. They typically start small and focused on most efficiently delivering a service. And I think they can do that, and they're necessary to do that. But then once in place, they inevitably expand over time and become inefficient. Why do bureaucracies get more inefficient? Is it fraud? No, this is a political message from Don Lon to stir up their polarized base. Bureaucracies accumulate regulations for corner cases and apply them across the board, and they don't have sufficient feedback and concern for cost. The metrics of bureaucracies don't favor cost efficiency like the private capitalist companies do. There aren't stock market brokers overseeing government departments and buying and trading them, and they're not competing to do things the most efficiently. There doesn't seem to be enough feedback on cost benefit. And maybe this is correct. Some people have argued that that's not bureaucracy's place. Bureaucracy's place is to deal with expensive things that require privacy. They require the government, things that we don't want to hand to private organizations bound for profit, things that are the common good, the defense of the country, the protection of our water and critical infrastructure, our health. These things shouldn't be privatized because obviously you don't want to go cheap to the lowest bidder on these things. But also, let me get back to the point about the growth of regulations for corner cases. You can't please all the people all the time, but we eventually find that something a bureaucracy is doing is hurtful to some small fraction of the population, and new regulations are added to try not to hurt these people. And this upfront is a good. This is important. We want to have buildings accessible, wheelchair accessible. We want to have our documents translated into all the official languages. We want to have hard of hearing people and visually impaired people able to access and use services that are important to all people. And the next thing I say is going to sound callous, but maybe we can't afford to make every floor of every building wheelchair accessible. Small businesses maybe can't afford elevators. Maybe it's not cost effective to put this in every government department, irregardless of their size. Maybe you can't afford to use the highest environmental standards in every build and make sure that every species is going to be safe and every nesting ground is going to be protected. There is a cost benefit analysis that's missing. There's no feedback mechanism for some of these things. And sometimes goods are identified and put in place without identifying whether the cost benefit analysis makes any sense at all, or whether there is one. And that's a difficult problem. So what can we do? Government bureaucracies have little feedback for efficiency or service as well. Middle managers are not incentivized to save money. The incentives in government are not money. They're perverse. They're mostly supposed to be service, but really there's no feedback for service. They're mainly complaint driven. Middle managers are given status based on the amount of money they can spend. If they underspend their budgets in a year, they get less money the next year. So there's no incentive to be efficient. Managers who grow their empires by hiring more employees move up the pay scale. This grows red tape. More layers of middle managers are inefficient. I've often referred to bureaucracy as the epoxy that greases the wheels of industry. In a large bureaucracy, there's little incentive to innovate or take risks. In many cases, the only feedback is whether someone complains about what you're doing. And if you do enough to elicit a complaint, you could lose your job. So that is directly against innovation and risk-taking and improvements. The safest thing is to do nothing. In a bureaucracy, you keep your head down and check your boxes and do nothing that could elicit a complaint. Don't lose your seniority. Don't lose your pension. Because of these factors, government bureaucracies tend to expand to absorb all available budget, whilst offering additional levels of red tape with a decreasing rate of service improvement over time. Now, many years ago, I toyed with the idea of empowering some sort of avatar of government efficiency with the power to eliminate whole swaths of managerial waste. And at the time, I discarded it as unlikely to be acceptable to society. And I don't think it is, but it's happening. Our southern neighbors now find themselves having voted in a unique test of this idea. So I'm actually very curious as to how much you can save by, doing this. And really what you have to do is just, as they're doing, cut indiscriminately and let the bureaucracy reform with the scraps, cut regulations, cut jobs, and find out where it ends up and whether or not you're still getting service. What have we seen recently from Doge? He's daily sending out wads of disinformation and hastily concocted lies about the fraud he's supposedly uncovered to maintain the support of his base, while he's been given the ability to place secret backdoors in all of the U.S.'s financial systems. But, maybe we can trust him. Maybe he's a good guy. Maybe, this billionaire is just a driven good guy, and he doesn't care about, the personal benefits that he might accrue by placing these backdoors in and having control over and knowledge about all of the private citizens' private data. However, opposing this idea, he is carefully choosing his targets and using his propaganda machine to call them cartoon villains. A study aimed at to help people fight addiction was characterized as injecting dogs with cocaine. A study aimed at developing technology to detect colon cancer using smart toilets was characterized as studying anal prints. A study looking at friction in robotic grippers was said to be aimed at determining whether a metal replica robot of Marvel Comics Thanos could really snap his fingers. He claims savings have been investigated and been found to be out by orders of magnitude. His claimed savings have been investigated by citizens and been found to be out by orders of magnitude. And, maybe this is just clerical errors. One of the biggest claims was the Social Security checks that he claims have been cut for people over 150 years old. It seems wrong. He published a list of the ages of people holding Social Security numbers and claimed that it indicates that millions of people over the age of 150 are getting checks. But this list was actually just a list of people with Social Security numbers. Doesn't mean they're getting checks. There was in 2015, I believe, they put in a rule that nobody over 115 gets checks. And you know that teenagers aren't getting checks. They have social security numbers, but they're not getting social security checks. It's been pointed out that the software system COBOL that stores these numbers defaults to 150 to 1875 if there's no date field. So that may explain some of this. What we're seeing is lots of smoke, lots of misinformation, but not a lot of substance. Why has he been? Let's look at the targets he's been picking. Let's follow the money. So far, his first targets have been agencies involved in lawsuits and investigation of Musk's many companies. So, you know, there is a self-serving motivation. And, you know, Trump has a revenge motivation. It's clear. Musk has a revenge motivation. It's clear. These people aren't just here for the good of society. Something good may come of this. And, you know, there is the will of the people to stop spending so much money on what's seen as frivolous things, shutting down diversity programs, spending on the arts mainly, and spending on social commentaries that are not aligned with their values. But why did DOJ shut down the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau? This is a group that protects consumers that have been ripped off. Well, it turns out they were investigating something like 300 complaints from disgruntled Tesla owners. Trump fired the director, Rohit Chopra, and installed Project 2025 architect Russ Vought as the Bureau's acting director. Speaking of, I've never heard of Project 2025. The U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID, were investigating SpaceX after they shut down access to Ukraine's military during their attack on the Russian fleet. Days after members of Congress requested that the Office of Government Ethics investigate Mr. Musk's conflicts of interest, given his status as a special government employee and his extensive business holdings that received billions of dollars in federal government contracts and subsidies, the director of the Office of Government Ethics was fired by Trump. What's going to happen to the bureaucracy? I mean, I expect something similar. You know, Twitter was kind of a canary in the coal mine, I guess. I think we're going to see something similar happen in the government bureaucracy. Twitter is still functioning. It's still delivering service to people. We saw a massive set of layoffs, significant drop in short-term functionality, followed by a slow return to functionality with a bare-bones staff. And this is where some savings will be present. From what I can see, X is now worth less than half what it was worth prior to Musk. Advertisers don't want to be associated with the conspiracies and white supremacist garbage emerging on the platform. I expect to see similar things from the U.S. in coming months. I'm afraid, you know, these plane crashes are the tip of the iceberg, and it's really going to be nearly impossible to disentangle all the impacts for years to come. But maybe, just maybe, there will emerge something more efficient, held together by those few underpaid souls who remain behind to fix the mess. Now, this superficial analysis doesn't even scratch the surface of regressive U.S. leave policies, maternal leave, parental leave, how the duress caused by lack of universal health care distorts the U.S. employment market to the benefit of the billionaires. Trump is saying that, you know, education in the U.S. is a problem. Look at Denmark, look at Scandinavian countries, how good their education is. These are places with lots of government regulations and lots of social programs. You know, I don't think Trump is advocating for their education systems. There's a lot of non sequiturs here, and we need to stay aware of what's happening. So, To sum it up, if you're interested in preserving democracy and protecting the people rather than the oligarchs, it is still possible. Trump is making enemies. Musk is making enemies. Many Trump supporters are or were government employees. They are hurting right now. Continue to look for the non sequiturs, counter the lies, continue to follow the money and hold Musk to account and highlight his double dealings. Be skeptical of his claims of fraud. The career civil servants that are being laid off, most of them are very good people doing their best with perverse incentives placed on them. It's not cost incentives. They have incentives placed on them by each executive, and they do their best to follow them. And each of these people are biased. So I understand Trump's concerns with the fact that the bureaucracy wasn't responding to his goals to implement his morals on them. But I urge you, don't be distracted by inconsequential details or things that Trump says. You can't understand what he's saying, and none of it you can believe. And half of it's a joke, apparently. But ask these questions. Why are they shutting down oversight? Why are they shutting down ethics? Why are they supporting our enemies over our friends internationally? Follow the money. Support your neighbors. Protect your neighbors. Don't give up. Accept disgruntled Trump voters and help them. Don't ridicule them. Don't take the bait. Don't increase the polarization. We're being shown the true nature of the power structure and the hierarchy, and we see the oligarchs are exposing themselves right now. This could allow us to realign properly between the people and the oligarchs. This is where the true tension in the current system lies. And I've looked through the economics of things, and you can look back through my podcasts. The economic imbalances that we're experiencing now are similar to the 1920s and 30s. And we know what happened after that. Follow the money, gather evidence, maintain a rational view. Protest the important things like the rule of law and the Constitution. Thank you for listening.
If you'd like to follow up with more in-depth discussions, please come find us on Facebook at The Rational View and join our discussion group. If you like what you're hearing, please consider visiting my Patreon page at patron.podbean.com/therationalview. Thanks for listening.